You know, when you think about what a soldier earns, you probably just picture a basic monthly salary, right? Well, the truth is, U.S. military compensation is this whole complex world of allowances, special pays, and benefits that go way beyond a single number. So let's get into it and break down what's really inside a modern soldier's paycheck.
And, this is the perfect time to dig into this because 2023 was a huge year for military pay. Service members got a 4.6% pay raise, and that's actually the biggest bump they've seen in 20 years.
So that all leads to the big question, right? With all these different pieces and parts, what does that monthly income actually look like? Well, the answer is a whole lot more interesting than you might think.
Okay, so the best way to think about military pay is like an iceberg. Seriously, what you see on the surface, that's just a tiny piece of the whole package. So let's start with that part you can see.
All right, so everything, and I mean everything, starts with what's called base pay. It's your standard taxable salary, and it's decided by just two things: a soldier's rank and how many years they've been in. Everything else gets built right on top of this foundation.
To make this real, let's invent a soldier we can follow. We'll call him Sergeant Mike. He's an E5 sergeant, been in the Army for about, say, 3 or 4 years. So, looking at the pay charts for 2023, his monthly base pay comes out to around $3,874. But remember, this is just the beginning.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting. A massive part of a soldier's pay comes from things called allowances. And here's the magic word, the most important thing you need to remember about them. They're non-taxable. This is a total game changer.
So let's be super clear about this. That base pay we just talked about for Sergeant Mike, that gets taxed, just like any other job. But these big allowances we're about to add, nope, not taxed at all. Every single dollar goes straight into his bank account, which means his actual take-home pay just skyrockets.
All right, you with me? We've got the base. Now, let's start piling on those awesome tax-free allowances and see what happens to Sergeant Mike's real paycheck. First up is the big one. I mean, a huge benefit. The Basic Allowance for Housing, or BAH as everyone calls it. If a soldier, especially someone married or a bit higher in rank like our Sergeant Mike, decides to live off base instead of in the barracks, the military gives them a monthly check to cover their rent. Now, this amount isn't the same for everyone. It changes based on where you are and your rank. But for a soldier, say, stationed over in South Korea, you could be looking at something like $2,154 a month just for housing. So let's add that to Sergeant Mike's stack.
And boom, just like that, Sergeant Mike's monthly income has shot past $6,000. This right here is the power of those non-taxable allowances. We just added over $2,000 to his pay, and remember, not a single penny of that is taxed. That's huge.
All right, next up, you gotta eat, right? The military makes sure of that too. It comes as the Basic Allowance for Subsistence, or BAS. And yep, you guessed it, it's another tax-free monthly payment, this time to cover groceries. For an enlisted soldier, we're talking about $369 a month. Now for the really young soldiers living in the barracks, this might get taken out to pay for their meals on base. But for a guy like Sergeant Mike, living off base, he gets that full amount in cash. Okay, so we've covered a place to live and food on the table. But the pay system is smarter than that. It actually adapts to what a soldier is doing, where they are, what their job is, and the kinds of risks they're taking.
So let's change the scenario a bit. Let's say Sergeant Mike's unit gets deployed, sent to a designated combat zone. This triggers a whole bunch of new mission-specific pays. And this is a massive deal, financially speaking. Suddenly, all of his earnings become tax-free. The whole thing.
Right away, one of the first things that kicks in is the family separation allowance. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're on orders that take you away from your family for more than 30 days, like a deployment, you get an extra $250 a month for that hardship.
Okay, let's add that to the pile. So after his food allowance and now this separation pay, Sergeant Mike is bringing in about $6,647 a month. We're really starting to see how this pay is tailored to the individual's exact situation.
And believe me, the list doesn't stop there. You've got combat pay for being in a hostile zone, hazardous duty pay, think jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, plus extra pay for flight crews, for sailors out at sea, divers, demolition experts, you name it.
Each one is there to compensate for a specific risk or skill.
Okay, so we've got the core pay, we've got the big allowances. Let's wrap this up and look at the final pieces of the puzzle. Bonuses, and a few other perks that really complete the picture.
You know, at the end of the day, the military has to compete for talent just like any big company. It needs people with very specific, in-demand skills. And one of the biggest tools they use to do that is offering large, one-time cash bonuses, both to get you to sign up and to get you to stay.
And what's so telling here is the difference between these two. The bonus to get you in the door might be a few $1,000s, but the bonus to keep an experienced soldier like Sergeant Mike, that can be way, way bigger. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. It's the military basically saying, hey, your experience is incredibly valuable to us and we want you to stick around.
And there's one last little thing to add to the mix. Military uniforms are not cheap, and they wear out. So, every year, on the anniversary of when you joined, you get a clothing allowance to help you maintain and replace your gear. It's not a ton of money, but hey, every bit helps.
So that clothing allowance, it adds maybe $33 a month to the paycheck. So, when you add that last piece in for Sergeant Mike's deployment scenario, you're looking at a monthly income of roughly $6,680.
So there you have it. We started with what looked like a simple base salary, and we built it up into this really complex, much larger total compensation. It's a system that's built to take care of a soldier's needs, but also to reward them for their skills, their sacrifice, and their dedication. So now that you've seen how it all breaks down, what part of this was the biggest shocker for you? Was it the power of those tax-free allowances, the special pays for being in a combat zone, or maybe those massive reenlistment bonuses? It just goes to show you, what's in a paycheck is almost never what it seems on the surface.